The bullet tore through Sam Mercer's shoulder as he sprinted through corridors that humanity had never built. Blood painted dark trails across alien metal, each footfall sending shockwaves of agony through his 68-year-old frame. Behind him, the thunder of military boots grew closer, accompanied by Marcus Webb's voice echoing off walls that pulsed with bioluminescent light. Mercer, you cannot protect it. You are just a janitor, a nobody who scrubs toilets for minimum wage, while real men make decisions that matter. Sam's lungs screamed for oxygen. His legs threatened to buckle with each stride. 30 years separated him from the soldier who had carried wounded men through burning oil fields in Kuwait. In those years had exacted their toll in ways that willpower alone could not overcome. But stopping meant death. Stopping meant failure. Stopping meant abandoning the only being who had looked at him in decades and seen something worth saving. He rounded a corner and collapsed against the wall, his vision swimming with blood loss and exhaustion. The wound was worse than he had admitted to himself. The bullet had torn through muscle and grazed bone, and no amount of battlefield stubbornness could compensate for basic biology. Then she appeared. Liara materialized from shadows that seemed to part for her like curtains before a queen. Her silver skin cast soft violet luminescence across the corridor, and her amethyst eyes found his with an intensity that transcended species. She moved with grace that belied her obvious exhaustion, 3,000 years of solitary imprisonment having drained reserves that even her extraordinary physiology could not fully replenish. Her hand closed around his and warmth spread through his failing body like the first sunrise after an endless winter. Am I a monster to you, human? The question carried weight that Sam felt in his bones. This was not curiosity. This was a soul that had asked this question countless times across millennia, receiving answers that had driven her deeper into isolation with each repetition. Her voice trembled, not with fear of the soldiers pursuing them, but with the terror of hope, the vulnerability of allowing herself to want acceptance one more time. Sam looked at her through eyes that struggled to focus. He saw the fear she tried to mask behind royal composure. He saw loneliness so vast it made his own seem trivial by comparison. He saw a queen who had sacrificed everything to prevent genocide, only to wake and discover that her sacrifice had changed nothing. His answer emerged without hesitation, carried on breath that might be among his last. No, you are not a monster. You are my queen, and I will protect you until my heart stops beating. Consciousness abandoned him before he could see her reaction. The last sensations he registered were her arms catching his falling body, tears like liquid starlight falling onto his weathered face, and somewhere in the distance, Marcus Webb screaming orders that would never be obeyed. 48 hours earlier, Sam Mercer had been invisible. The word carried no supernatural connotation. His invisibility was the mundane variety, the kind that accumulated naturally around 68-year-old men who worked night shifts cleaning floors that important people walked across without looking down. Research Station Delta 7 employed 1,700 personnel across various security clearances and scientific disciplines. Sam Mercer existed at the bottom of every hierarchy that mattered, his presence noted only when something needed cleaning and forgotten the moment that cleaning was complete. His shift began at 10 each evening and ended at 6 each morning, 8 hours of pushing carts through corridors where discoveries happened behind locked doors he would never be authorized to open. The work suited him. Silence suited him. The absence of human connection that would have devastated a younger man had become comfortable armor for one who had lost everyone worth connecting to. Margaret had died 3 years ago, her battle with cancer ending on a Tuesday morning that had somehow poisoned all subsequent Tuesdays with grief he could not articulate. 40 years of marriage had created a life he did not know how to live alone. Their house felt too large without her voice filling its rooms, too quiet without her laughter, too empty without her presence reminding him daily that someone believed he was worth loving. So he worked nights. He slept through days. He existed in the liminal space between neither fully present nor entirely absent, waiting for something he could not name and had stopped expecting to find. The cleaning cart squeaked as Sam guided it through quarter 7, its damaged wheel a constant companion that maintenance had promised to repair 4 months ago. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead in patterns so familiar they had become invisible. He passed the break room where coffee rings stained tables that no one cleaned except him. He passed security checkpoints where guards scrolled through phones without acknowledging his existence. He passed laboratory doors, behind which the future was being invented by people who would never know his name. Control Room C4 waited at the end of his route, the main monitoring hub for the station's most classified project. Sam's clearance allowed him access for cleaning purposes only with cameras tracking his every movement to ensure he touched nothing beyond trash cans and floor tiles. He had cleaned this room perhaps 2,000 times without incident, without curiosity, without any awareness that tonight would be different. The door opened at 2:47 a.m., precisely on schedule. Blue-white light from dozens of monitors cast the room in colors that reminded Sam of hospital equipment, of the machines that had measured Margaret's decline in numbers and graphs he had learned to read, despite wishing he could not. The night crew had departed an hour ago, leaving behind energy drink cans and candy wrappers that Sam collected with the mechanical efficiency of long practice. He was wiping down a console near the back wall when the anomaly caught his attention. Most displays showed data streams in languages he did not speak, scientific notation, and classified information that his brain had learned to process as meaningless patterns requiring no interpretation. But one screen, older than the others and positioned in a corner as if embarrassed by its obsolescence, displayed something different. A waveform pulsed across its surface in rhythms that seemed almost organic, rising and falling with a regularity that reminded Sam of breathing, of heartbeats, of the monitors that had tracked vital signs in field hospitals, where the difference between a soldier living and dying had come down to recognizing when rhythms faltered. This rhythm was not faltering. It was waiting. Sam leaned closer, his cleaning cloth forgotten in his hand. The waveform originated from coordinates labeled only as Area 7, a designation he had encountered on door signs but never behind those doors. The timestamp in the corner showed data stretching back decades, perhaps longer. The pattern never changing, never accelerating, never doing anything except continuing with patience that seemed almost deliberate. He pressed the intercom button connecting to the security station. "This is Mercer janitorial staff. I am in C4. There is something on one of the monitors I think someone should examine." Static preceded a bored voice. "What kind of something?" "A signal, a pattern. It appears to originate from Area 7. The silence that followed lasted long enough for Sam to wonder if the connection had failed. When the guard spoke again, condescension had replaced boredom. "Area 7 is classified far above your clearance, Mercer. Finish cleaning and forget whatever you think you observed." But the pattern appears biological. It resembles a heartbeat that has been slowed by a factor of perhaps 100, as if something were sleeping and waiting to wake. "Mercer." The voice hardened into warning. "You clean floors. We monitor systems. If something required attention, we would have noticed. Complete your shift and go home. That is an order, not a suggestion." The intercom clicked into silence. Sam stood alone in the blue-lit control room, staring at a waveform that pulsed with impossible patience. The guard was correct about one thing: Sam cleaned floors. His job description did not include investigating anomalies, questioning protocols, or remembering anything that happened during shifts when forgetting would be more convenient. He finished cleaning Control Room C4. He emptied the final trash bag, wiped the final console, returned his cart to the supply closet where it would wait for tomorrow's identical routine. He clocked out at 4:23 a.m., drove his 15-year-old pickup truck through security gates that opened without anyone checking his identification, and headed east toward a sunrise that painted the desert in colors Margaret would have loved. Sleep did not come. Every time Sam closed his eyes, the waveform appeared behind his eyelids, pulsing with rhythm that seemed to call to something buried deep in his memory. He dreamed without sleeping of vast chambers filled with light that moved like breathing. He heard without ears a voice calling across distances measured not in miles but in millennia. He felt without touching a loneliness so profound that his own seemed trivial in comparison. The next evening, Sam arrived at Research Station Delta 7 with a decision already made. His route proceeded normally for the first 2 hours. Administrative wing, cafeteria, technical areas. He nodded to night workers who did not nod back, answered perfunctory questions about his health, with responses so familiar they required no thought. Nothing in his behavior suggested deviation from routine. But when his route brought him to the East Maintenance Corridor, Sam turned left instead of right. The service tunnels beneath Delta 7 formed a labyrinth of pipes and conduits, their concrete walls sweating condensation in the perpetual coolness that existed below desert surfaces. Sam had cleaned these tunnels during his first year at the station, before budget reductions had eliminated that responsibility from his contract. The mental map he had constructed then remained intact, guiding him through turns that grew stranger with each descent. Modern concrete gave way to stone blocks fitted with precision that seemed impossible for their apparent age. Lighting panels embedded in ceilings cast shadows that moved in directions shadows should not move. The air thickened with ozone and something else, something that tasted the way Sam imagined starlight might taste if starlight had flavor. He stopped before a door that should not have existed. Its surface gleamed with metal that reflected colors he could not name, covered in symbols that seemed to shift when viewed directly. No handle presented itself, no keypad or scanner or any mechanism his experience recognized as functional. The door simply existed, waiting with the same patience as the waveform that had called him here. Sam reached out and touched its surface. The door opened. The chamber beyond defied every assumption Sam had accumulated across 68 years of existence. Vast beyond any space that should have fit beneath a research facility, its walls curved upward into darkness that somehow still glowed with inner light. Columns of crystalline material rose from floors that rippled like water, but supported his weight like stone. And everywhere light pulsed in the rhythm he had seen on the monitor, the rhythm that had called to him across barriers of security clearance and common sense. Sam walked forward, drawn by forces he could not name, and no longer tried to resist. His footsteps echoed in patterns that seemed to multiply, to harmonize, to create music from mere movement. The cleaning supplies he had brought as cover hung forgotten at his side, their purpose rendered absurd by surroundings that had never known mops or brooms or the concept of maintenance. The chamber's center held a structure he could only interpret as a throne, though no throne in human history had looked remotely similar. It rose from the floor in spirals of impossible metal, its seat occupied by a figure frozen in stillness, so perfect it seemed less like sleep and more like time itself had forgotten to include her in its passage. Her skin caught the pulsing light and threw it back in silver cascades. Her features combined the familiar and the alien in proportions that his brain struggled to process. Her hands were folded across her chest in a pose suggesting peace rather than death, waiting rather than ending. Sam approached without conscious decision. Something about this figure demanded attention that he could not refuse. She was beautiful in ways that transcended the word's normal meaning, her presence creating a gravity that pulled him forward, step by inevitable step. He stood before her, this impossible woman, in her impossible chamber, and waited for something to happen. Minutes passed. The pulsing light continued its ancient rhythm. The figure remained motionless, preserved in whatever state had held her for ages beyond counting. "I do not know why I came here," Sam said aloud. His voice sounded small against the chamber's vastness, swallowed by distances that should not exist. "I do not know what any of this means. But I saw your heartbeat on a screen where heartbeats should not appear, and I could not simply walk away. I have walked away from too many things in my life. Perhaps I am too old to keep doing that." The light shifted, the rhythm accelerated, and the figure's eyes opened. Amethyst light flooded Sam's vision with intensity that seemed to bypass his eyes and strike directly at his consciousness. He staggered backward, raising his arm against brightness that carried weight and meaning beyond mere illumination. Sounds reached him that were not quite sounds, vibrations forming patterns that somehow conveyed meaning, his brain translated into language. When his vision cleared, she was standing before him. Tears streamed down silver cheeks that had not felt moisture in 3,000 years. Her body trembled with emotions too vast and too ancient for human comprehension. She looked at Sam with eyes that had witnessed civilizations rise and fall, eyes that held loneliness so profound it made his own seem like a momentary inconvenience. 3,000 years. Her voice resonated in frequencies that made his bones ache with sympathetic vibration. "I believed it was days. I closed my eyes to wait, and 3,000 years passed like a single breath." Sam could not speak, could not move, could not do anything except stand witness to grief that had been waiting since before his species had learned to write. She stepped closer, moving with grace that seemed to cost her enormous effort. Whatever power she possessed had been drained by centuries of imprisonment, leaving her diminished in ways that were visible even to his untrained perception. "I am Lyara," she said. "Once I was queen of the Valtari Empire. I ruled 50 billion souls across 1,000 worlds. I held the fate of civilizations in my hands, and I tried to hold them gently. She lifted those hands, now studying them as if seeing them for the first time in millennia. The silver skin that covered them pulsed with diminished light, echoes of former glory reduced to whispers of what had been. My counsel betrayed me. They wished to use a weapon, that our scientists had created a device designed to end all wars by ending all enemies. I refused. I understood what such power would cost, how it would transform us into the very monsters we feared. Her voice cracked with emotion that 3,000 years had not diminished. So they sealed me here. They removed my authority, silenced my warnings, told our people I had died heroically defending them. And then they used the weapon, despite everything I had sacrificed to prevent it. Sam found his voice, though it emerged as barely more than a whisper. What happened? What always happens when small minds grasp power they cannot comprehend. The weapon did not distinguish between enemy and creator. It destroyed everything connected to Valtteri energy signatures. Every ship, every colony, every person carrying our genetic markers. Liara closed her eyes. 50 billion lives gone in moments. Because I was not there to stop them. Because they silenced the only voice telling them what their actions would cost. The weight of her words pressed against Sam's chest like a physical force. He thought of Kuwait, of 12 soldiers dying because one commander refused to acknowledge inconvenient intelligence. He felt ashamed of ever believing he understood loss. I am sorry, he said. The words were pathetically inadequate for grief measured in billions, but they were all he possessed. Liara's eyes opened. She looked at him with an expression he could not read, something between wonder and disbelief. You are the first to say that, the first to come without weapons drawn, the first to speak to me as if I were a person rather than a threat to be eliminated. Others have been here, many times across the centuries since your species discovered this place. They sent soldiers who fired before speaking. They sent scientists who saw me as a specimen to be studied. They sent diplomats who offered treaties while their hands reached for weapons. She touched her chest where faint scars marked her silver skin. I defended myself because I did not understand what was happening. By the time I comprehended the truth of my situation, I had already given them every reason to fear me. Sam looked at those scars, at the weariness in her ancient eyes, at the trembling in hands that had once commanded empires. Am I a monster to you, human? The question hung between them like held breath. Sam heard the hope she tried to suppress, the terror that hope represented after countless disappointments. He heard 3,000 years of loneliness asking permission to end. No, he said, you are not a monster. You are a victim. Someone who tried to do the right thing and was punished for it by people who should have listened. He paused, his own history rising unbidden. I know something about that. Liara's expression shifted. The light pulsing through her skin brightened slightly, like dawn beginning to break after an endless night. You speak truth, she whispered. I can feel it in your words. After so long surrounded by deception, I had forgotten what honesty felt like. She reached toward him, then stopped, her hand hovering in the space between them, asking permission. Sam extended his own hand. Her fingers touched his, and warmth flooded through him. Warmth that carried images and emotions, fragments of a civilization beyond imagination, of a queen who had loved her people enough to stand against them when they chose destruction over wisdom. The connection broke. Liara stumbled, weakness claiming her, and Sam caught her without thinking. She weighed almost nothing, her body seemingly made of light given temporary form. I must rest, she said. This awakening has cost me more than I anticipated. Will you stay? I am a janitor. I should not be here at all. Someone will notice my absence from my route. Then you must go. Disappointment flickered across her features, quickly suppressed behind royal composure. I understand. You have your own world, your own responsibilities. I should not expect. I will come back. The words surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise her. But once spoken, he recognized their truth. He would return. Whatever impossible thing had begun in this chamber beneath the Nevada desert, he could not walk away from it. He had walked away from too many things already. Tomorrow night, he promised. Same time. I will find a way. Liara's smile was the most beautiful thing Sam had seen since Margaret's face on their wedding day. He made his way back through tunnels that seemed shorter now that he knew their destination. The door closed behind him without sound. The corridors returned to their familiar concrete and fluorescent normalcy. His cleaning cart waited where he had abandoned it, patient and uncomplaining. Sam finished his shift on automatic pilot, his hands performing familiar motions while his mind remained miles below in a chamber where an alien queen waited for someone to treat her like a person rather than a problem. He clocked out at the usual time, drove through security gates that opened without incident, headed toward a sunrise that seemed somehow brighter than yesterday's. He was almost to his truck when a voice stopped him cold. Mercer. Sam turned. A man stood behind him, tall and military straight, despite gray hair and lines that mapped decades of hard decisions. His uniform bore insignia that Sam recognized with a surge of hatred he had spent 30 years trying to bury. Colonel Marcus Webb, the man who had ordered the assault that killed 12 soldiers in Kuwait. The man whose career had advanced on graves that Sam's nightmares still visited. The man who had somehow materialized in this parking lot at the exact moment Sam least wanted to see anyone from his past. Webb. Sam kept his voice neutral, though his hands had clenched into fists without conscious instruction. I did not know you were stationed here. Director Webb now, actually. I run the Special Projects Division. This entire facility answers to me. Webb's smile carried no warmth whatsoever. I heard you were working here. Janitor, correct, cleaning floors and emptying trash cans. How appropriate for someone who always preferred cleaning up messes to making the hard decisions that create them. I preferred keeping soldiers alive to getting them killed through arrogance, if that is what you mean. Something flickered in Webb's eyes. Anger, perhaps. Or the recognition that old wounds still bled when pressed. You always did have a mouth on you, Mercer. I am surprised it has not gotten you into more trouble over the years. Trouble finds me regardless of what my mouth does. Some things never change. No, some things do not. Webb stepped closer, his presence invading Sam's space with the casual dominance of a man accustomed to being feared. I understand you had some concerns about data appearing on monitors in Control Room C4. Something about biological signals originating from restricted areas. Sam's blood chilled. I reported an anomaly. Security dismissed it as irrelevant. Security reports to me. Everything in this facility reports to me. And I find it interesting that a janitor with no scientific training noticed something that my monitoring team somehow overlooked. Webb's eyes narrowed. Or perhaps they did not overlook it. Perhaps they simply decided that certain observations from certain observers were better left unacknowledged. I do not understand what you are implying. I am not implying anything. I am telling you directly that Area 7 is classified at levels you cannot imagine. Whatever you think you saw on that monitor, forget it. Whatever curiosity you might feel about what lies beneath this facility, suppress it. And whatever ideas you might have about investigating matters above your clearance, abandon them immediately. I am just a janitor. I clean floors. I have no interest in classified matters. Good. Keep it that way. Webb smiled again, and Sam remembered that same smile across a tactical display while soldiers died following orders that should never have been given. Because if I discover that you have been somewhere you should not be, we will have a very different conversation. One that you will not enjoy and will not walk away from. He turned and walked away before Sam could respond, disappearing into the facility with the confidence of a man who owned everything his eyes surveyed. Sam stood alone in the parking lot, morning sun warming his face while cold certainty settled in his stomach. Webb knew something, maybe not everything, but enough to be dangerous. Whatever secrets Area 7 contained, Webb considered them his personal property. And Sam had just announced his interest in that property to the one man capable of making his life significantly shorter. The drive home passed in a blur of conflicting impulses. Every instinct, cultivated through 30 years of military service, screamed at him to forget everything, to return to his invisible existence, to let sleeping aliens and buried secrets remain undisturbed. But another voice, quieter but somehow more insistent, reminded him of Lyara's tears and the loneliness in her ancient eyes, and the simple human truth that some things mattered more than safety. His phone buzzed as he pulled into his driveway. A text from a number he barely recognized had not called in over 2 years. Dad, Emma has been asking about you. She wants to know if Grandpa Sam will come to her birthday party next month. I told her probably not that you are busy with work. Was I right, Daniel, his son, who had stopped speaking to him after Margaret's funeral? Who blamed him for decades of absence during a childhood filled with promises Sam had failed to keep? Who had every right to the anger that simmered beneath those carefully neutral words? And Emma, his granddaughter 8 years old, born with a heart condition that required surgery her parents could barely afford. He had met her 3 times, each visit strained by tension between father and son, by the weight of mistakes that could not be unmade. Sam stared at the message until his screen went dark. He should respond, should reach out, should try to bridge the gap that had grown so vast over so many years. But the words would not come. They never did. He went inside, sat in the kitchen where Margaret's coffee mug still occupied its spot by the window, and tried to sleep. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw amethyst light and heard a question that had waited millennia for an answer. Tomorrow night he would return. Tomorrow night he would keep his promise. And whatever consequences Webb's warning portended, Sam Mercer had finally found something worth facing consequences for. Dr. Elena Cross intercepted Sam in the parking lot before his third night shift, her lab coat replaced by civilian clothing that made her appear younger and more vulnerable than her professional armor typically allowed. She glanced around the nearly empty lot, checking for observers, before pulling him between parked vehicles where security cameras could not reach. Webb called a classified meeting this morning. Her voice emerged barely above a whisper. I was not supposed to attend, but I have access to monitoring systems he does not know exist. He is assembling a tactical team. 20 operators, full combat equipment. They are preparing to breach Area 7 within 72 hours. Sam's stomach dropped. How much does he know? Enough to be dangerous. He knows something dormant has recently activated. He knows you have been accessing restricted areas. And he knows that whatever exists in that chamber represents technology that could shift global power dynamics permanently. Elena's eyes searched his face with uncomfortable intensity. What did you find down there, Mercer? What is worth mobilizing a military strike force? You would not believe me if I told you. Try me. I have spent 15 years studying anomalies that violate every principle of conventional physics. My threshold for disbelief is considerably higher than most. Sam studied the young scientist before him. She had risked her career, possibly her freedom, to deliver this warning. She deserved truth, even truth that sounded like madness. A queen, the last survivor of a civilization that destroyed itself 3,000 years ago. She was imprisoned by her own people because she opposed using a weapon of mass destruction. Now Webb wants that weapon, and she is the only one who can provide access to it. Elena absorbed this information with remarkable composure. An alien intelligence with access to advanced weaponry. Webb must be practically salivating. You believe me? I believe something extraordinary is happening. I believe Webb becomes dangerous when he wants something badly enough. And I believe you are not the type of man who invents stories for attention. She pressed a small device into his hand. Emergency communicator. Encrypted frequency that Webb's people cannot monitor. If circumstances deteriorate, press the button. I will do whatever I can from my position. Why are you helping me? You could lose everything. Elena's expression hardened with old pain. My father was a whistleblower. He exposed corruption in a defense contract and spent the remainder of his life being systematically destroyed by men exactly like Webb. He taught me that some principles matter more than career security. She stepped back, preparing to leave. 72 hours, Mercer. Whatever you are planning, plan faster. She disappeared into evening shadows, leaving Sam alone with a countdown he could not stop and a responsibility he could not abandon. The chamber felt different when he arrived. Pulsing light had intensified throughout the space, responding to Lyara's growing strength as her body recovered from millennia of forced stasis. She stood before a section of wall that had transformed into a window displaying star systems Sam could not identify and would never visit. You are troubled. She turned to face him, her amethyst eyes reading his expression with disconcerting accuracy. Something has changed since yesterday. Webb knows about you. He is assembling soldiers. We have less than 3 days before they arrive. Lyara absorbed this news without visible panic. 3,000 years of loss had taught her that catastrophe was simply the universe's default state to be endured rather than feared. Then we must accelerate our timeline. The archive can be awakened, but the process requires preparation that normally spans weeks. She gestured toward the throne at the chamber's center. Come, there is much you need to understand before we proceed. She led him through passages he had not explored deeper into the complex that honeycombed the earth beneath the Nevada desert. Each chamber revealed wonders that made previous wonders seem ordinary. Libraries where crystalline structures stored information in formats his species had not yet imagined. Laboratories where experiments remained frozen mid-process, waiting for scientists who would never return. Living quarters that still contained personal effects of people who had died 3,000 years ago, their daily lives interrupted by extinction. We were not warriors by nature, Lyara explained as they walked. The Valteri Empire expanded through knowledge rather than conquest. We discovered cures for diseases that plagued younger species. We shared technology that elevated civilizations from darkness. Our greatest achievement was the Academy, where minds from across the galaxy gathered to learn and teach and push the boundaries of what was possible. What changed that? Fear. The word carried the weight of civilizations. We encountered a species called the Devourer Swarm. They consumed everything in their path, not for resources or territory, but because consumption was their fundamental nature. For the first time in our history, we faced an enemy that could not be reasoned with, could not be educated, could not be integrated into our vision of cooperative advancement. They entered a chamber dominated by a holographic display that activated at her gesture. Sam's breath caught as images materialized, showing ships larger than cities engaged in desperate combat. Worlds being stripped of atmosphere and water and life. The Valtari fleet fighting hopelessly while planets died in their wake. We were losing, slowly but inevitably, world by world, system by system. Our council debated endlessly while billions perished. And then one of our scientists proposed the extinction protocol. Lyara's voice grew cold. A weapon capable of destroying the swarm entirely, erasing them from existence as if they had never evolved. But you opposed it. I understood what such a weapon truly meant. Not merely the death of our enemies, but the death of everything we believed about ourselves. If we could destroy one species utterly, we would eventually find reasons to destroy others. The weapon would transform us from teachers into exterminators, from builders into destroyers. She closed her eyes. My brother Varen disagreed. He convinced the council that survival justified any means. When I refused to authorize deployment, they removed me from power and sealed me in stasis. They told our people I had died heroically, and then they used the weapon despite everything I had sacrificed to prevent it. And it turned on them. In their haste to deploy, they failed to account for the weapon's true nature. It did not simply destroy the swarm. It destroyed everything connected to Valteri energy signatures. Every ship that carried our technology, every colony that used our power systems, every person whose genetics carried markers of our species. Her hand touched the wall and the holographic display shifted to show the aftermath. Empty space where worlds had orbited. Silent stations drifting without power or life. The weapon did not distinguish between enemy and creator. It simply eliminated everything our civilization had ever touched. Sam struggled to comprehend destruction on such a scale. His entire frame of reference for tragedy consisted of 12 soldiers in Kuwait and one wife in a hospital bed. 50 billion lives ending simultaneously existed beyond his capacity for emotional processing. The archive, he said slowly, working through implications. That is what Webb wants, the weapon specifications. The archive contains all Valtari knowledge, including the extinction protocol, but it also contains everything else. Medical advances that could eliminate any disease currently affecting your species. Energy technologies that could end your dependence on destructive resources. Methods of interstellar travel that could open the galaxy to human exploration. Lyara turned to face him fully. The archive represents humanity's potential salvation or its certain destruction. The outcome depends entirely on who controls access to its contents. Webb will choose destruction. He always does. Then we must ensure he never gains control. Lyara led him to the chamber's center, where a pedestal rose from the floor in spirals of crystalline metal. The archive can only be fully awakened by two consciousnesses working in harmony. One Valtari, one being of pure intention. The process was designed this way deliberately to prevent any single individual from accessing its full power regardless of their species or position. What does pure intention mean in practical terms? It means someone whose deepest motivation is not personal gain, not revenge, not fear of consequences. Someone who acts from genuine desire to benefit others, even when that desire carries personal cost. Her eyes met his with uncomfortable intensity. When you found me, you carried no weapons. You came seeking to understand rather than exploit. You spoke to me as a person worthy of respect rather than a resource to be claimed. In 3,000 years of encounters, you are the first to approach me with intentions the archive would recognize as worthy of trust. Sam understood what she was asking. The weight of it pressed against his chest like something physical and heavy. If I help you activate the archive, what happens to you? The process will require energy that my stasis, preserved physiology, has been storing for millennia. I will be weakened significantly. She paused. But there is another path. The burden can be shared between two consciousnesses. You would carry part of my memories permanently. The joy and the sorrow, the love and the loss. 50 billion lives would exist within your awareness forever. That sounds like something that might drive a person insane. It might, or it might expand your understanding of existence in ways that make previous limitations seem arbitrary. Liara's hand found his. I will not ask this of you without ensuring you understand completely. The choice must be entirely yours. The communicator in Sam's pocket crackled with Elena's voice. Mercer, we have a complication. Webb just received a report about anomalous data transmission from beneath the facility. He knows something is happening. He is accelerating his timeline. You might have 24 hours instead of 72. Copy that. We will adjust accordingly. Liara heard the exchange without requiring explanation. Then we must begin immediately. Every hour of delay reduces our probability of success. What do you need me to do? First, you need to understand what you will experience. The archive will not simply transfer information like data between machines. It will share consciousness. You will perceive reality through Valtari senses. You will feel emotions calibrated for a species with deeper capacity for both joy and sorrow than humans typically possess. You will carry memories that span millennia rather than decades. Will it hurt? Yes, but not in ways that cause damage. It will hurt the way truth hurts when it contradicts comfortable assumptions. It will hurt the way growth hurts when it requires abandoning familiar limitations. She squeezed his hand gently. Are you willing to accept this burden? Sam thought about Margaret dying while he held her hand and prayed to gods who never answered. He thought about Daniel growing up without a father who was present even when physically nearby. He thought about Emma asking about a grandfather she barely knew. Her damaged heart requiring surgery her parents could not afford. He had carried burdens throughout his life. At least this one served a purpose beyond mere survival. I am willing. They began that night. The process could not be rushed without risking catastrophic failure, and their timeline had compressed from comfortable to desperate. Liara guided Sam through preliminary exercises designed to expand his consciousness enough to accept the coming transfer. He learned to quiet mental noise that he had not realized was constant. He learned to perceive beyond the limitations his species had evolved. He learned that reality contained dimensions his previous existence had never acknowledged. During rest periods, they talked. Liara described her childhood in the academy, surrounded by minds that sparkled with curiosity about everything from quantum mechanics to comparative literature. Sam shared stories of Kuwait and Margaret in the distance that had grown between himself and everyone he should have loved better. They discovered that loneliness transcended species, that loss was universal, that connection could form between beings separated by biology and millennia. You consider yourself a failure, Liara observed during one such conversation. I can perceive it in your thoughts, the conviction that you have accomplished nothing of permanent value. The evidence supports that interpretation. 68 years old, living in a trailer, no one visits, working a job designed to be invisible. My wife died. My son refuses to speak with me. My granddaughter might not survive long enough to remember me. Your wife sounds like someone who saw clearly. She was everything I was not. Patient when I lost my temper. Hopeful when I surrendered to cynicism. She believed in people even when belief seemed foolish. His voice softened with memory. She believed in me when I could not believe in myself. After Kuwait, when I was drinking myself toward oblivion and pushing everyone away, she refused to give up. She saved my life simply by insisting that my life was worth saving. And now you do the same for others. You came to this place expecting nothing and discovered someone who needed exactly what you possessed. Lyara's hand covered his. That is not failure, Sam. That is purpose, finding its moment after years of patient waiting. Sam's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and felt his chest constrict. I need to take this. He stepped away, answering with hands that trembled slightly. Daniel. Dad. His son's voice carried exhaustion and something that might have been concern. I got your message about Emma's birthday. Are you actually planning to attend? I said I would. You have said many things over the years. History suggests skepticism is appropriate. The accusation stung because it was earned. Sam had missed birthdays, holidays, school events, graduations. He had prioritized abstract duty over specific family until duty became excuse and family became strangers. I understand why you do not trust me, but I meant what I said. Whatever it takes, I will be present. Silence stretched across the cellular connection. When Daniel spoke again, his voice had softened by a degree. Emma talks about you constantly. She shows her friends the photograph you sent last Christmas. She tells them her grandfather was a hero who saved soldiers during the war. I was not a hero. I was a medic who happened to survive when better men died. She does not need that distinction. She needs a grandfather who appears when he promises to appear. Daniel paused. Dad, are you in some kind of trouble? You sound different, like something is happening that you are not telling me about. Sam looked at Lyra across the chamber, her silver form illuminated by pulsing light, representing technology beyond human imagination. He thought about Webb and his soldiers, about timelines compressing toward violence, about the very real possibility that he would not survive the next 48 hours. There is something I need to accomplish, something important that I cannot explain right now, but I need you to know that whatever happens, I love you. I have always loved you, even during all the years when I failed to demonstrate that love through presence and attention. Dad, you are frightening me. I do not intend to frighten you. I intend to be honest for perhaps the first time in our relationship. Sam forced steadiness into his voice despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm it. I will explain everything when I see you at Emma's party. I promise, but for now, I need you to trust me. Just this once, even though I have given you no reason to offer that trust. Another long silence. Then, okay, I will trust you, but Dad, please be careful. Whatever you are doing, Emma needs her grandfather to actually arrive this time. I will. I love you, Daniel. I love you too, Dad. The call ended. Sam stood motionless, the weight of his son's unexpected trust pressing against his chest. Decades of earned resentment had not fully extinguished the love beneath it. One phone call could not undo accumulated damage, but it offered something Sam had not realized he needed. A specific reason to survive. A face to fight for when abstract principles faltered. Liara approached her expression thoughtful. Your son. He loves you despite his anger. I do not deserve it. Love rarely concerns itself with deserving. It simply exists waiting for acknowledgement. She touched his arm gently. You have much waiting beyond this chamber. Do not sacrifice your future for my sake. I am not planning to sacrifice anything. I am planning to succeed. They returned to their work with renewed urgency. The archive's awakening proceeded through stages that challenged Sam's consciousness in ways he could not have anticipated. He experienced fragments of Lyara's memories with increasing clarity. Childhood wonder at the academy. The weight of a crown she never wanted but accepted from duty. The moment she realized her brother had chosen extinction over wisdom and the helpless rage of being unable to prevent catastrophe. He also experienced deaths. Not all 50 billion, not even a meaningful fraction, but enough. Enough to understand what had been lost. Enough to feel echoes of countless voices crying out and then falling silent. Enough to change something fundamental in how he perceived existence and its fragility. Elena's updates grew more urgent as hours passed. Webb's tactical team had completed preparations. Equipment was being loaded. Briefings were scheduled. He is planning to move at midnight tomorrow, Elena reported. Whatever you are doing, it needs to be finished by then. Understood. We are proceeding as quickly as circumstances allow. There is something else, Elena's voice dropped. Webb has been making calls to people outside the facility. I cannot access the content, but the patterns suggest he is coordinating with agencies that do not officially exist. Whatever he is planning, it extends beyond simple acquisition of alien technology. What do you think he intends? I think he sees this as his legacy project, the discovery that transforms human civilization under his control. He will not let anything or anyone prevent that, regardless of what laws or ethics require. The communicator fell silent. Sam sat beside Liara as the chamber's light pulsed around them, patient and eternal, despite the urgency pressing against their timeline. We cannot complete the full awakening before Webb arrives, Liara said quietly, but we can accomplish something that might be sufficient. The archive can begin distributing its contents globally before the process completes. Medical knowledge, energy, research, scientific principles. Once that distribution begins, Webb cannot reverse it regardless of what he does to us. You are suggesting we prioritize the archive's contents over our own survival. I am suggesting we prioritize 50 billion lives worth of accumulated wisdom over 2 individual existences. Her eyes met his without flinching. I have lived for millennia already. If my death enables your species to avoid repeating our mistakes, that seems like an acceptable exchange. What about what I want? What about the fact that I am not willing to watch another person I care about die while I stand helplessly nearby? Sam, no, we find another way. We complete the transfer, distribute the archive, and survive to see what happens next. All 3 objectives, or I do not participate. Liara studied him for a long moment. Something shifted in her expression, something that might have been respect or might have been recognition of kindred stubbornness. Very well, we attempt the impossible. It would not be the first time someone I trusted refused to accept limitations that seemed absolute. They worked through the night, pushing the archive's awakening as fast as the process allowed. Sam felt his consciousness expanding, with each passing hour accommodating perspectives and memories that should have overwhelmed a human mind. The burden was heavy, but Liara had been right about sharing it. Together they could carry what neither could have managed alone. Dawn approached. Webb's assault was hours away, and somewhere in the quantum depths of Valtteri technology, the archive stirred toward wakefulness, preparing to transform human civilization, whether individual humans approved or not. Sam looked at his hands, the same weathered hands that had saved lives in Kuwait, and held Margaret's fingers as she slipped away and pushed a cleaning cart through corridors where no one knew his name. Those hands now held the fate of 2 species, the memories of billions, the hope of a future worth building. No pressure whatsoever. Liara touched his shoulder and warmth flowed through the contact. You are ready. The question is whether you believe it. I stopped believing in myself a long time ago. Then believe in the version of yourself that I perceive. The one who faced an alien queen without weapons or hostility. The one who offered compassion when fear would have been easier. The one who refused to abandon someone in need simply because abandonment would have been safer. Her smile carried warmth that transcended species. That person can accomplish what we need to accomplish. I am certain of it, even if you are not. The archive's light intensified, signaling that the moment of decision had arrived. Sam took a deep breath and stepped forward to meet it. The archive awakened in a cascade of light that made every previous illumination seem dim by comparison. Sam felt consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of his skull, beyond the limitations of human perception, beyond anything he had believed possible for a being constructed of carbon and water and electrical impulses. Liara's mind merged with his own, not overwhelming, but complementing, adding dimensions to his understanding that he had never known were missing. He saw the Valtteri Empire at its height, worlds of impossible beauty orbiting stars that pulsed with engineered harmony, schools where children learned to touch the fabric of reality itself, hospitals where death had been reduced to an inconvenience rather than an inevitability, gardens that defied botany growing plants that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions. He saw the war, ships dying in bursts of silent fire against the infinite darkness of space, worlds being consumed while defenders fought hopelessly against an enemy that could not be stopped or reasoned with. The slow, grinding despair of a civilization realizing it had encountered something beyond its capacity to defeat. He saw Liara's choice. The moment she refused to authorize genocide, knowing that refusal would cost her everything. The betrayal in her brother Varen's eyes as he ordered her imprisonment. The cold embrace of stasis as consciousness faded into 3,000 years of dreamless waiting. And he saw the extinction. The weapon activating without proper calibration. Energy expanding outward in waves that did not distinguish between friend and enemy. 50 billion lives ending in moments that stretched to eternity for those experiencing them. The silence afterward, vast and permanent and absolute. The visions faded. Sam found himself kneeling beside the archive's pedestal, gasping for breath that felt larger than his lungs could accommodate. Liara knelt beside him, equally exhausted but radiant with triumph. It is accomplished. The archive is distributing its contents to every connected system on your planet. Medical knowledge, energy solutions, scientific breakthroughs that will transform human civilization. Webb cannot stop it now. The knowledge belongs to everyone. Alarms shattered the moment. Red emergency lighting flooded the chamber as facility security systems detected unauthorized data transmission on a scale they had never been designed to handle. Somewhere above them, Sam knew Webb's tactical team was responding to alerts that demanded immediate action. They are coming earlier than expected. Sam pushed himself upright, ignoring muscles that screamed protest. Elena warned me Webb was accelerating his timeline. Then we must be prepared to meet him. Liara rose beside him, and for the first time Sam perceived the queen she had once been. Power gathered around her like a cloak, despite her exhaustion, ancient and dignified and refusing to yield. I will not allow your courage to conclude in Webb's victory. The archive is protected now, but we are not. She raised her hand and the chamber transformed around them. Walls shifted, passages sealed. New pathways opened in configurations that had not existed moments before. The technology responded to her command with eager precision, recognizing its rightful master after millennia of dormancy. There is another route to the surface, one they cannot anticipate because it did not exist until I created it. She extended her hand towards Sam. Will you trust me? He took her hand without hesitation. Lead the way. They ran through corridors that reconfigured behind them, sealing their trail with barriers of living metal that would resist any force Webb's team could bring against them. Sam's body protested every step, but adrenaline masked the worst of the pain. He had operated on less rest and Quaid had pushed through worse exhaustion when lives depended on his steadiness. The communicator crackled. Sam, it's Elena. They've breached the main chamber. Webb is absolutely furious. He's ordering his team to spread through the tunnel network in search patterns designed to cover every possible exit route. Copy that. We are heading for the surface through alternative passages. There's something else you need to know. Elena's voice carried urgency that bordered on panic. Webb just received confirmation about the data transmission. He knows the archive's contents are spreading globally. I've never heard him this angry, Sam. He's taking this as a personal attack. He takes everything personally when he doesn't get what he wants. Be careful, he's not thinking rationally anymore. He's thinking like a man who has lost everything and wants someone to blame. They emerged from the tunnel system into a storage area beneath the facility's motor pool. Industrial shelving lined walls stacked with supplies accumulated over decades of operation. Emergency lighting cast everything in shadows that moved in ways shadows should not move. Sam assessed their situation with eyes trained by decades of military experience. 2 exit stairs leading to the motor pool above, and a service corridor connecting to the main facility. Guards would be watching the obvious routes. The corridor offered their best probability of escape. Stay close. Move when I move. Stop when I stop. I am not fragile porcelain requiring protection from every potential threat. No, you are the most important person on this planet right now, and I am the person whose job is ensuring you remain that way. They moved through the storage area, keeping to shadows using shelving for cover. The facility above them hummed with activity as Webb's team searched for prey that had already escaped their net. Sam heard boots on metal voices calling coordinates, the organized chaos of a military operation proceeding according to protocol. The service corridor stretched ahead, dimly lit, but apparently unoccupied. They were halfway to the exterior door when footsteps echoed from behind them. Contact, hold position. Sam pressed Liara against the wall, his body shielding hers from potential observation. Two soldiers emerged from a side passage, weapons raised, sweeping the corridor with professional efficiency. Clear left, clear right, continuing sweep. They passed without detecting the two figures pressed into shadows mere feet away, their attention focused on territory ahead rather than areas they believed already searched. Sam held his breath until their footsteps faded into distance. Your species is not as observant as it believes itself to be. Thank God for small favors. Come on! They reached the exterior door without additional encounters. Sam cracked it open, surveying the pre-dawn darkness beyond. The motor pool spread before them, vehicles arranged in rows, the perimeter fence visible perhaps 200 yards distant. Three guards patrolled the area in patterns that created predictable gaps. When the nearest guard turns away, we move to that truck. Then we wait for the next gap and proceed to the fence. And beyond the fence, my truck is parked half a mile east. We drive until we are far enough away to think clearly. The guard turned. Sam and Liara sprinted across open ground, footsteps silent on packed earth. They reached the truck's shelter, pressing against cold metal, breathing hard. Movement by the motor pool. The shout came from their left. Sam risked a glance and saw a guard pointing in their direction, radio already rising to his lips. Run! They abandoned stealth for speed. The fence loomed ahead, chain link, topped with razor wire that gleamed in security lighting. Sam spotted a section where maintenance had removed a bottom panel, creating a gap just large enough for a person to squeeze through. There, go! Liara dove through the gap, her silver form scraping against earth as she pulled herself through. Sam followed the wire, catching his jacket and tearing fabric as he struggled to fit his larger frame through the narrow opening. Gunfire cracked behind them. Bullets struck the fence, sending sparks showering across Sam's back. He felt heat sear his shoulder, pain erupting where a round grazed flesh. Then he was through, running across desert scrubland, with Liara beside him, facility lights fading behind them as darkness embraced their escape. His truck waited where he had left it, hidden among rock formations that provided natural concealment. Sam's hands shook as he fumbled for keys, his shoulder bleeding freely, now the wound more serious than adrenaline had allowed him to acknowledge. You are injured. I'll survive. Get in. The engine turned over. Sam guided the truck along a route that avoided main roads, heading into empty desert, where Webb's pursuit would find no easy paths. Behind them, searchlights swept the landscape, and helicopters spun up with the distinctive thunder of military response. They will continue hunting us. I know, but right now they are searching for two people on foot. By the time they realize we have transportation, we will be significantly distant. They drove in silence as the sun began its ascent. Sam's shoulder throbbed with each heartbeat, blood soaking through the improvised bandage he had fashioned from his torn jacket. Let me help. Liara reached across the seat, her fingers hovering over his wound. I may be weakened, but I retain sufficient capability for healing. Warmth spread through Sam's shoulder. Not the heat of infection, but something deeper, something that felt like cells remembering their optimal configuration. When Liara withdrew her hand, the bleeding had stopped, and pain had faded to a manageable ache. Thank you. It is the minimum I can offer. You have given far more than I can adequately repay. They found shelter in an abandoned mining complex 50 miles from the facility. Rusted equipment and collapsed structures provided concealment while Sam assessed their situation. Elena's communicator still functioned, providing updates on Webb's increasingly frantic search operations. He's convinced you're still within the immediate perimeter. Helicopters have been circling the same search area for hours. Elena's voice carried exhaustion and worry. But Sam, there's something else you should know. The archive transmission succeeded completely. Research institutions worldwide are reporting receipt of data packages containing information that shouldn't exist. The scientific community is going absolutely crazy trying to understand what they've received. Can Webb suppress it? Not anymore. The distribution was too wide, too fast, too simultaneous. He's attempting to classify the information, but it's already spreading through academic networks faster than anyone can control. You accomplished what you set out to accomplish, Sam. Whatever happens next, you changed everything. Sam looked at Liara, who sat beside rusted mining equipment with her eyes closed. Her silver luminescence had dimmed to a pale glow, her body conserving whatever reserves remained. The queen who had defied her empire to prevent genocide now rested in a crumbling industrial facility, exhausted but victorious. What is Webb doing now? That's the concerning part. He's recalled most of his search teams, called a meeting with senior staff. I can't access what they're discussing, but body language through security cameras suggests nothing good. Elena paused. Sam, I think he's planning something different now. Something that isn't just search and recovery. Such as, I don't know specifically, but be cautious. Webb doesn't accept defeat gracefully. He finds ways to punish people who deny him what he believes he deserves. Sam sat beside Liara as dust motes drifted through shafts of morning light. His body demanded rest, but his mind refused to quiet. You should sleep. Liara's voice emerged soft and tired. We are safe temporarily. Your body requires recovery time. I will sleep when this concludes. This will never conclude in the way you mean. Webb will continue pursuing us. Your government will demand explanations. The world will require answers about knowledge suddenly flooding their institutions. We have initiated something that cannot be contained within normal boundaries. Then what do? We continue, we adapt. We locate allies among those who understand what the archive represents. She turned to face him fully. But first you must decide what you genuinely want, Sam Mercer. Not what duty demands or circumstances require. What does your heart truly desire? The question penetrated layers of deflection and self-protection. Sam considered it seriously, perhaps for the first time in his life. I want to attend my granddaughter's birthday celebration. I want to rebuild something meaningful with my son. I want to know that everything I have lost wasn't entirely meaningless. He met her amethyst gaze. And I want to protect you. Not because you are a queen or because you hold keys to humanity's future. Because you are my friend, and friends do not abandon each other. Liara's smile carried warmth that transcended biological categories. Then we share identical desires, family purpose, connection. These are not unique to your species or mine. They are universal truths that transcend boundaries we imagine between ourselves and others. A sound interrupted them, vehicles approaching, multiple engines growing louder. Sam moved to the complex's entrance, peering through gaps in rusted metal. 3 black SUVs had appeared on the access road, moving with purposeful velocity toward their position. Not standard military vehicles, but government. The transportation used by people who operated outside normal chains of command. They found us. How is that possible? We left no trail. Sam's hand found the communicator. Elena, we have company. 3 vehicles approaching our location. Static preceded Elena's response, strained with fear. Sam, get out of there immediately. Webb tracked your phone signal. He's been monitoring it since you departed the facility. Those aren't search teams. That's his personal extraction unit. The vehicle stopped 200 yards from the mining complex. Doors opened. Men emerged, heavily armed and moving with coordinated precision that indicated professional training. And leading them, stepping from the lead vehicle with satisfaction distorting his features, was Marcus Webb. Mercer, his voice carried across the desert morning with practiced command authority. I know you're inside. I know she's with you. This can conclude peacefully or it can conclude badly. The choice belongs entirely to you. Sam looked at Liara. She had risen, her exhausted body somehow discovering reserves of dignity and defiance. I will not let him take what remains of the archive's access protocols. The archive's contents are already spreading globally. He cannot reverse that. But he can still harm us, can still attempt to extract whatever remains of my knowledge, can still transform whatever he obtains into weapons your species is unprepared to possess. Her jaw set with determination. I will not permit another civilization to suffer because of what my people created. Then we don't allow him to take anything. Sam, there are 20 armed professionals out there. We possess nothing. We possess each other. We possess truth. And we possess something Webb will never comprehend. He took her hand. Sometimes beings who appear weakest prove to be strongest. I learned that in Kuwait, watching medics preserve lives while warriors fell around them. I learned it from my wife, who faced death with more courage than any soldier I ever served with. And I learned it from you, a queen who chose exile over genocide when everyone demanded she choose otherwise. Webb's voice echoed again. You have 60 seconds, Mercer. Then we enter shooting. Sam squeezed Liara's hand. Do you trust me? With everything I am and everything I have been. Then follow my lead. He walked toward the complex entrance, stepping into clear view of Webb and his assembled forces. 20 weapons trained on his chest. 20 fingers rested on triggers. Webb smiled with the confidence of a man who had already won. Intelligent choice, Mercer. Now bring out the asset and we can conclude this unpleasantness. She is not an asset. She is a person, a queen, the last survivor of a civilization that made humanity look like children, experimenting with matches. Sam continued walking forward, closing distance between himself and Webb. And you are not taking her anywhere. You possess no position from which to negotiate. I am not negotiating. I am explaining how this concludes. Sam stopped 10 feet from Webb, close enough to observe uncertainty flickering behind the colonel's confident facade. The archive is distributed. Every major research institution on the planet has received its contents. You can kill us both, but you cannot reverse what we have accomplished. I can try, and I can ensure you don't survive to observe the attempt. Then do it. Pull your trigger. Add 2 more deaths to the collection you have been accumulating since Kuwait. Sam's voice hardened. But ask yourself something first, Marcus. Ask yourself what happens when the world discovers what you did here. When scientists start comparing notes about where this incredible technology originated. When investigators start examining classified facilities and discovering evidence of contact with non-human intelligence. Webb's smile faltered. You're bluffing. Am I? Elena Cross has copies of everything. Security footage, communication logs, the archive's original transmission data. If I don't check in within the next hour, she releases it all. Every news organization, every government agency, every international body that might be interested in learning that the United States has been concealing evidence of extraterrestrial civilization for decades. She wouldn't dare. She already has. The question is whether you want to be remembered as the man who murdered humanity's first contact with an alien species on camera, or the man who walked away when he still possessed that option. Liara emerged from the complex, her silver form catching morning light. She walked to stand beside Sam, her presence commanding attention despite her diminished power. You are Marcus Webb. Her voice carried weight that millennia of existence had accumulated. I have encountered your type before. In every civilization, in every era, there exist those who believe strength justifies cruelty, who convince themselves that power excuses the abuse of that power. Her eyes met his without flinching. My brother was such a being. He destroyed our entire species rather than admit he might be wrong about anything. I'm not interested in philosophy lectures from aliens. Then consider practical reality. Liara stepped closer, and something ancient stirred in her diminished form. The knowledge I carry cannot be contained. It is already spreading beyond your capacity to control, transforming your world, whether you approve or not. You can kill me, but you cannot reverse what I have already given your species. She raised her hand, and before anyone could react, she pressed her palm against Webb's forehead. Light erupted between them. Webb screamed, not the scream of physical pain, but something far deeper, far more primal. His body convulsed as memories that were not his own flooded his consciousness with overwhelming force. He saw through the eyes of a Valteri child watching her parents dissolve into light. He felt the terror of a scientist realizing his creation would destroy everyone he loved. He experienced 50 billion deaths simultaneously, each one unique, each one permanent, each one carrying weight that no human mind was designed to bear. The weapon clattered to the ground from fingers that had forgotten how to grip. Webb collapsed to his knees, tears streaming down a face that had forgotten how to produce them. Stop. Please stop. I didn't know. I didn't understand. Now you do. Liara's voice carried no triumph, only exhaustion, and something that might have been pity. This is what absolute power costs. This is what weapons like the one you sought would create. This is the burden of choices made without wisdom. Webb's soldiers stood frozen, uncertain how to respond to a threat that was not physical, to an assault that left no visible damage. Their training had prepared them for combat, not for watching their commander weeping on desert sand, while an alien queen stood over him like judgment made manifest. Lights appeared on the horizon. More vehicles approaching, but these bore markings that made Webb's soldiers lower their weapons entirely. Government sedans, press vans, a helicopter with network logos emblazoned on its fuselage. Elena's voice crackled through Sam's communicator, carrying satisfaction and relief. Cavalry is arriving. I made some calls while you were buying time. Turns out several senators and cabinet members are very interested in meeting our new friend before anyone else gets the chance. Webb watched his ambush dissolve into a media event. His extraction squad, designed for quiet violence in forgotten locations, found themselves surrounded by cameras and officials who outranked him by considerable margins. Men in suits approached with credentials that superseded military authority, their expressions suggesting that Webb's career had just concluded in ways he had not anticipated. This isn't finished, Mercer. Yes, it is. You simply don't recognize it yet. They took Webb away in one of the government sedans, his soldiers following in vehicles that would return to bases where debriefings would last for weeks. Sam and Liara remained surrounded by people who wanted answers instead of violence, questions instead of threats. The hours that followed compressed into fragments of overwhelming activity. Interviews with officials who struggled to comprehend what they were witnessing. Medical examinations that revealed nothing human science could adequately explain. Negotiations about security and protection, and the thousands of questions that humanity suddenly needed answered. Through everything, Sam stayed at Liara's side. When exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, he provided steady support. When questions became accusations, he defended her with fierce loyalty. When bureaucrats suggested containing her for further study, he reminded them that she was a sovereign being, not a specimen. 6 months later, the world had transformed in ways Sam could barely comprehend. The archive's medical knowledge had already saved thousands of lives globally. Research institutions worldwide had developed treatments for diseases previously considered incurable. Energy technologies were revolutionizing power generation in ways that would reshape civilization within a generation. Emma's heart surgery, performed using Valtari regenerative techniques, had been a complete success. She ran through her backyard now with energy she had never possessed before, her laughter carrying no trace of the fragility that had defined her existence. Sam stood before a classroom of young scientists and diplomats in the building that bore his name despite his objections. The Mercer Institute for Interstellar Relations had opened its doors 3 months ago, and applications already exceeded capacity by substantial margins. The most important lesson I can teach you, he told the attentive faces before him, is that first contact doesn't require advanced degrees or military training. It requires something far simpler and far more difficult: the willingness to see another being as a person rather than a threat, the courage to offer compassion when fear would be easier, the wisdom to listen before acting. Elena sat in the front row, her role as the Institute's Director of Research fitting her perfectly. She had testified before Congress about Webb's operation and the government's decades of concealment. Her father's legacy of whistleblowing had found continuation in ways he could never have imagined. After the class concluded, Sam walked through corridors designed to reflect both human and Voltari aesthetics. He found Liara in the garden that occupied the building's central courtyard, her silver form surrounded by plants that incorporated genetic material from both civilizations. The students seem engaged today. They are young and idealistic and believe they can change everything. Sam sat beside her on a bench carved from crystalline material that Liara had shaped from archive specifications. They remind me of someone I used to know. You never knew someone like these students. You were always the one who questioned whether change was possible while secretly working to make it happen anyway. Margaret would have loved this place. She always believed in possibilities I considered naive. She sounds like someone I would have appreciated knowing. They sat in comfortable silence as artificial sunlight warmed the garden. Outside, the world continued transforming. News reports discussed breakthrough after breakthrough emerging from archive knowledge. International conferences debated protocols for future contact with non-human intelligence. Children played games that incorporated concepts their parents could not have imagined understanding. Do you regret it? Sam asked eventually. Giving humans access to knowledge that could destroy us as easily as save us. Every civilization faces that choice eventually. The knowledge itself is neutral. Intentions determine outcomes. Liara turned to face him. I trusted you with my people's legacy because you proved your intentions through action rather than words. The rest of your species will make their own choices, and those choices will determine whether this gift becomes salvation or destruction. That's a lot of responsibility to place on beings you barely know. I know enough. I know that when you found me, you came without weapons. I know that when Webb threatened you, you refused to surrender. I know that when the choice came between personal safety and protecting someone in need, you chose protection without hesitation. Her hand found his. If your species produces even a small percentage of individuals with similar values, the archive's knowledge will serve beneficial purposes. Sam's phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Emma is asking when Grandpa Sam and the Space Queen are coming for dinner. She has questions about stars that her teachers can't answer. He showed Layara the message. Her smile carried warmth that 6 months of recovery had restored to its full brilliance. It seems we have an engagement. We have many engagements. That's what happens when you become the most famous humans on the planet, by accidentally discovering an alien queen and distributing her civilization's knowledge to the entire world. You are not the most famous human. You are simply the one I prefer. They walked together through the institute past students and researchers and administrators who had learned to treat their presence as normal. Outside, a car waited to take them to Daniel's house, where Emma would ask questions about distant stars and ancient civilizations, and whether Lyara had ever met beings who looked like unicorns. The drive passed through a world that was changing daily. Solar panels based on Valtteri designs covered rooftops that had been empty 6 months ago. Medical clinics offered treatments that would have seemed miraculous before the archive's distribution. Schools taught physics that incorporated principles humanity had never discovered on its own. Daniel met them at the door. The tension that had defined his relationship with Sam for decades had not vanished entirely, but it had evolved into something that allowed for forgiveness and growth. They talked regularly now. They shared meals. They built the relationship that should have existed all along. Emma's in the backyard. She's been looking through the telescope you gave her trying to find Layara's home system. It is not visible from Earth with the optical instruments, Layara said, but I can show her where to look anyway. Sometimes knowing where something exists matters more than seeing it directly. She walked into the backyard where Emma immediately abandoned her telescope to embrace the alien queen she had adopted as a supplementary grandmother. Sam watched them together, the ancient being and the child she had helped save connected across impossibilities by something as simple as mutual affection. Daniel stood beside his father, observing the same scene. I still can't entirely believe this is real. 6 months ago, you were cleaning floors at a research facility. Now you run an institute that's reshaping human civilization, and your best friend is a 3,000-year-old alien queen. I still clean floors sometimes. It helps me think. That's the most you thing I've ever heard. Daniel's voice softened. I'm sorry, Dad, for the years of anger, for blaming you for things that weren't entirely your fault, for not understanding why you were the way you were. You had every right to be angry. I was absent when I should have been present. I chose duty over family until duty became an excuse and family became strangers. Maybe, but you're here now. You kept your promise about Emma's birthday, and you've kept showing up ever since. That matters more than the past. Sam put his arm around his son's shoulders, feeling decades of accumulated distance begin to dissolve. In the backyard, Layara was pointing toward the sky while Emma listened with the absolute attention children gave to things that genuinely mattered. She asked me a question once, Sam said quietly. The first time we met, she asked if she was a monster. What did you tell her? The truth, that she wasn't a monster, that she was someone who had tried to do the right thing and been punished for it. That loneliness doesn't make someone monstrous just alone. Daniel was quiet for a moment. That sounds like something Mom would have said. She taught me how to see people instead of threats. I just forgot for a while. I don't think you forgot. I think you were waiting for someone worth remembering for. Lyara looked up and caught Sam's eye across the yard. Her smile carried 3,000 years of loneliness finally ended, and the hope of a future that extended far beyond either of their individual lifespans. Sam smiled back, feeling peace settle into places that had been empty for longer than he cared to remember. Some questions didn't require complicated answers. Am I a monster to you? No. You are my friend. You are my queen. You are the person who taught me that it's never too late to become who you should have been all along. The sun set over a world that was changing. Emma's laughter echoed across the backyard. Liara's silver luminescence glowed soft and warm in the fading light. Daniel stood beside his father for the first time in years, willing to try again. And Sam Mercer, 68 years old, former soldier, former janitor, current director of humanity's first Interstellar Relations Institute, finally understood that the measure of a life wasn't what you lost, but what you found when you stopped being afraid to look. The beginning of everything that mattered.